Hello, hello. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. It's Mother's Day today, so tell your moms or your grandmas or an aunt or a neighbor lady, Happy Mother's Day. All right, Genesis 37. I did quite a bit of study on this. This has kind of always been an interesting chapter. I've done a sermon on it before and stuff. I'm not a minister either, so a minister probably has done lots of sermons on every part of the Bible. I'm just a regular guy who happens to have done a sermon on it. And this is going to get into Joseph, son of Jacob, and kind of the children of Jacob from now on. So we're still just in Genesis 37. We move all the way from Adam to Noah through the Bible, all the way up to Joseph. And I was doing my research, and I had an interesting little reading right here from this guy. I don't know. Whatever, it's enduringword.com. It's not like an endorsement of it, but just this one little part. And it's talking about the genealogy and the generations leading up to where we are at in the Bible. It says, Enoch shows the walk of faith. Noah shows the perseverance of faith. Abraham, the obedience of faith. Isaac, the power of faith. And Jacob shows the discipline of faith. Along these lines, we could say that Joseph shows the triumph of faith. Joseph never complained, and he never compromised. I've always enjoyed the story of Joseph. Two of my favorite stories and characters of the Old Testament are Daniel and Joseph, and they're very similar, and that's why I like them both. The two stories are quite similar in a lot of ways. And I always saw Joseph really as the best of the patriarchs, and he's not even technically, he's not part of Jesus' line or anything, because through Judah is where Jesus comes. Maybe I'm way off, but I'm almost certain that's right. Joseph, though, is the almost ideal man. Christ is the one that we should try to be like, and we're given simple bits of people who are close to him, and I think Joseph is one of those who came, close to it. Obviously not sinless or anything, but as far as the way that you should live your life in any circumstances, you can really see that in the story of Joseph, and we'll get into it right here. King James, Genesis 37, verse 1. And Jacob dwelt in the land wherein his father was a stranger, in the land of Canaan. These are the generations of Jacob. It's basically saying this is the history of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding the flock with his brethren, and the lad was with the sons of Bilhah and with the sons of Zilpah. Now these are Jacob's two concubine wives. So he's got two wives, Leah and Rachel, and I think Rachel's passed on at this point, and each one of them gave their handmaid to him as well. And again, I talked about this earlier, some sects of Christianity and other religions will say that, Jacob and other people show us that it's okay for us to have many wives. No, it's not. It's stated clearly in the Bible that's not the way to live. Now, that doesn't mean that God doesn't still use people who are sinners. Obviously, that would be ridiculous. Jacob's a man. He's a sinner. And this is not the ideal way to live. But that doesn't mean that God hates him. He still knows that Jacob's a righteous man, even though he's doing this thing that is not okay. And that doesn't make that thing okay either. So you have to understand that. And you can see throughout the history afterwards that this is a troubled family life that they have. Because think about it. There's favoritism going on. There's rivalries like crazy. Now, think about a normal sibling rivalry. Now, amplify that by different mothers. And you're living in the same household. And a father who's showing favoritism based on the wife that he cares about most. This gets messy. And we need to understand that not every family is perfect. Again, I'm not endorsing polygamy in any way. In fact, I'm condemning it. But we can see that God doesn't forsake people based on the family that they came from. Whatever your family issues have, and every family has issues, the perfect nuclear family does not exist. But whatever it is, God is still there for you. If you let him into your heart and you live a godly life, He will still bless you and take care of you no matter what you do. Your family circumstances are irrelevant to God. Now, it makes life easier. It really does. Having a strong family obviously that's the real privilege. Everyone talks about privileged people, where you're born at, what skin color you have, your gender. These are all privileges. The real privilege is having a strong family, having a strong community around you. It goes under Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You need to feel loved and belonging, and a family is a great way for that. But when there's this rivalry based on polygamy, it can get real messy, and we'll see that here. So Joseph is with his half-brothers taking care of the flock. Where am I at? With his brethren, the lad was with the sons of Bilhah and with the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives, concubines. And Joseph brought unto his father their evil report. Now Israel, which is Jacob, loved Joseph more than all his children, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a coat of many colors. And when his brethren saw that their father loved him more than all his brethren, they hated him and could not speak peaceably unto him. Now we see this all throughout the Bible. This goes back to Cain and Abel. It's pure jealousy. Okay? This person is more loved than that person. Now we don't technically know why Jacob loved Joseph most. We say it's because it was the son of his old age. And that makes a lot of sense. You have this son that you weren't expecting with your favorite. Rachel was his favorite wife. That was the one he wanted from the beginning. And he kind of had to go through the other women to get Rachel, basically. Go through her sister Leah, and then they each wanted to have more children, and they used their handmaids to have more children. But Jacob always wanted Rachel. And then she wasn't able to have kids for a long time until he got real old, and she was old, and then came Joseph. And this is a large reason why he's Jacob's favorite. But also, you need to remember, Jacob is the best of them. He's the godliest, the nicest, the kindest, the most honest one of the bunch. So remember that. It's not that Jacob didn't love his other sons. I mean, somewhat in the Bible, but really, really in the testimonies of the 12 patriarchs and other books that you can find that are pretty verifiable, very verifiable to have existed at the time of Christ and beforehand. That Judah was he was a warrior, like no other. And his brothers each had their own strengths. But Joseph was righteous. And right here, let's go back. So he was tending the lambs, and Joseph brought his father their evil report. So he's with his half-brothers, and he comes back to his dad, and he tells them basically that they'd been misbehaving. They were doing something inappropriate, something they shouldn't have been doing. Whatever it is, we're not told, but basically they weren't acting righteous. Good. Come on, Joseph. Snitches get stitches, man. And we'll see it. He gets his stitches for this. He told on his brothers. You don't tell on your brothers, Joseph. I wouldn't have. I mean, my brother did a lot of stuff, and eventually, if it was enough, I would tell on him, and usually not get believed. I don't know if anyone can relate to that, but if you had a brother who was older and kind of beat on you a little bit, you'd finally tell your mom when it got bad. She hardly even believed you. I and my cousins and my friends can relate to that. But it must be something pretty bad. I tend to think so. Because you wouldn't tell on your brothers for something lame. Jacob wouldn't care if it was something lame. And his brothers wouldn't even be mad at him if it was something lame. They might think he's a dork and, not like him for that reason. But more than likely, they were doing something pretty inappropriate. And Jacob got pretty mad at him for it. And now also, again, he's his favorite, so he makes him this beautiful coat. Remember, making dyes for coats and colors wasn't an easy thing to do. It was seen as being you're very glamorous and glorious to have something like that. There are some people who think that this is, and this goes back to, again, non-canonical books. It's not verifiable at all, but that this coat is actually the one that's been passed down since the original clothes that God made for Adam when they left the Garden of Eden. And I don't think that's at all what's going on. There's other stuff. Other people think that it has, and actually some people think this is something that Nimrod used to get his power, after the flood, that Cush stole it from Noah, and then, Cush is the father of Nimrod, or the grandfather of Nimrod. and that's what made him become a Gibberine, or like the Mighty Men of old. I don't really buy into that. I don't think the whole clothes magic thing is a big... Who cares, really? Because it's not a point of salvation. It's interesting, but I just want to throw that in there because this is a study of all the theories on these chapters. So he tells on his brothers. They get mad at him. They don't like him. His dad loves him more than all the rest, but gives him this awesome gift. Think about that at Christmas. You get like your brother or your sister gets this sweet new, the latest iPhone or something, and you get a pair of socks. Like, all right, you're not too happy with your brother or sister, or you're not happy with your parent if you're close with your brother, but they're clearly not close with Joseph. So they hated him for the favoritism that he's shown, and also because he told on them for whatever they were doing. Who knows what it was? And snitches get stitches. And Joseph, this is verse 5, and Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told it to his brethren, and they hated him yet the more. And he said unto them, Hear, I pray you, this dream which I have dreamed, for behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheaf arose, and also stood upright. And behold, your sheaves stood about, and made obeisance to my sheaf. I'm almost certain that means bowed or something, but I'll look that up in a second. Obeisance to my sheaf. And his brethren said, okay, let's read New International, just because I want to be clear on that one right there. Verse 7, again, we were out in the field trying to bundle the grain. Suddenly my bundle stood up. So sheaf is a bundle, if I didn't say that earlier. Stood up, and your bundles all gathered around and bowed. Yep, low before mine. That's what I thought. And his brethren said to him, Shalt thou indeed reign over us? Shalt thou? Or shalt thou indeed have dominion over us? And they hated him yet the more for his dreams and for his words. Like, what an arrogant prick, they're thinking. Screw you, Joseph. You're the youngest of us. Judah's rocking it out there, warrior, ended up killing Rephaim and Nephilim and people and stuff like that, and the Canaanites, and we're the older ones. We've been taking care of stuff longer, and you think you're going to be the one that rules over us? Screw your dreams. Screw you, man. You don't know what you're talking about. You just think you're going to inherit everything because you're daddy's favorite. Like, this is what's going through their minds. Think about it. They're not seeing Joseph for being just an honest, upright man. And again, and I get it, because he's only 17. You don't really know the person, I guess, at this point. Even if he has been pretty upright up until this point, he's still only 17, and you're the older ones. And it's hard to look at a teenager as a grown man and think that they're like this great man, because they haven't really shown themselves to be a man yet, and Joseph hasn't. But even though he hasn't shown himself in any way, and his brothers have, he's the dad's favorite. And then he's bragging about it. He's like, yeah, I had a dream, basically, that you guys are going to bow down before me. I mean, what a cocky prick. That's what they would be thinking. I'm not going to say that's what you would be thinking, but that's what they would be thinking. It's funny, they talk about alpha versus beta, with alpha male, beta male, and then there's gamma and all this other stuff. And nothing wrong with alpha males. I think alpha males are a good thing and a great thing. But a lot of the men in the Bible are betas, but they're betas to God. Like, that's what you're supposed to be. If you're a good beta, but your alpha is Christ, is God, you're exactly what God wants. And that's what Joseph is. Whereas brothers are all alpha type mentality, which is fine if you still have that obedience to God, but then you have to humble yourself and realize that you're a beta to him. And not that they didn't love God, but clearly we'll see that the brothers think totally different than Joseph. Joseph thinks for God and lives for God. They kind of think and live for themselves in a lot of ways. They're much more, but that doesn't mean they're not godly. It just means that Joseph is more godly. It's hard. If that's confusing, I don't know how to make it more clear than that. I know it's kind of gray, but that's the world. That's the world we live in. Things are just kind of gray like that. And of course, they're pissed. Like, what, you're being cocky, man, and we're sick of this crap. We are the older brothers. We should inherit. We're not going to bow down before you. We're going to make sure this doesn't happen. So verse 9, and he dreamed yet another dream, and told it his brethren. I like how he keeps telling his brothers. This is what's funny to me. Either Joseph is super cocky, and he's like, yeah, hey Judah, hey guys, hey Reuben, guess what? Yeah, I'm gonna rule over you. You're gonna bow down before me. This is what I dreamed. I dreamed it. So, ha. Or he loves and trusts his brothers. And I tend to think that. I tend to think he doesn't realize that his brothers would ever hurt him, and that they don't love him, and like it says, they not speak peaceably unto him. Like, I don't think he realizes the animosity they have towards him. I think he's like, hey guys, guess what? Guess what? I had this dream. It's crazy, isn't it? This is so weird. And not thinking at all that they're jealous, not, kind of being naive to the situation. And I see that as more likely as a 17-year-old, that he's just naive to it. He doesn't realize the hatred that they may have towards him because of it, or because of Joseph's favoritism. He's just kind of like, hey, ooh, hey, guess what? Ooh, yeah. Maybe he's being cocky, but I don't tend to think so. Because why would he keep telling his brothers? If he knows that they hate him, why would he keep going to them? And either he's being cocky and provoking them, which younger brothers sometimes do, or he trusts them and loves them, and because they're his brothers. Behold, I have a dream more, and behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars made obeisance to me. So they bowed to him. And he told it to his father and to his brethren, and his father rebuked him and said unto him, what is the dream that thou hast dreamed? Shall I and thy mother and thy brethren indeed come to bow down ourselves to thee, to the earth? And his brethren envied him, but his father observed the saying. See, I've tried looking this because rebuked him. I always thought rebuked meant to take the opposite side. But I'm going to read the New International real quick because I wanted to make a point on this. This time he told his dream to his father as well as to his brothers, but his father scolded him. Scold him. Will your mother and I and your brother bow down for you? But your brothers were jealous of Joseph. His father wondered what the dreams meant. So his immediate response was to rebuke, is to scold him, to kind of get angry. When I was younger, always thought that what he was doing was just questioning, and not in necessarily an angry way. But the more I've looked into the translation, he kind of was angry. Jacob kind of was like, eh. And it shows, again, Jacob, he is still a righteous man, but clearly he's flawed. And in a way that he still is kind of like, what? I shouldn't have to bow to you. You're my son. Kind of like he was flawed in the way that he dealt with his brother Esau. Jacob isn't a perfect man by any means. He wanted the inheritance. He wants to rule over his sons. He doesn't want one of his sons to rule over him. This is weird, And again, it's not that God doesn't love Jacob and doesn't see his righteousness and have great love for Jacob, but Jacob is still a man. He's still very flawed. But at the same time, this is why he's righteous. His initial reaction, scold. What? We're going to bow down before you? And his brothers oozed on that. They let that hatred grow. Jacob took it to God. He didn't let it fester inside of him. He wondered on it. But his father observed the saying. The other translation is, his father wondered what the dreams meant. He meditated on it. He took it to the Lord. He thought about it. He didn't think about it in hatred like Joseph's brothers do, like Jacob's other sons, He thinks about it, what does this mean? What is the meaning behind this? What is God trying to say? While the brothers are like, what is he saying? How dare he? They are letting it go with anger. Letting the anger grow. Jacob doesn't let the anger stay in, because he has more of an understanding of righteousness than his sons do, because he's lived a longer life and everything, and God's actually come to Jacob and spoken to him in many ways. So that's what I want people to understand. A lot of us will have an initial reaction to something. Just a, what? Huh? No way. And we can let that fester. We can let that grow. Or we can take that information to the Lord and think about it and contemplate on it. You know, I tell you, do this with the news. Don't immediately react to the news. Actually, you probably shouldn't even watch most of the news. But when you hear something, take it to the Lord in prayer. That doesn't mean just necessarily let the Lord will take care of everything, because you have to act and have an action on things. But don't let the fear that you hear in news, the fear of, you know, I'm going to bow to my son, I'm going to lose my power, or the hatred and jealousy you might have when you hear of somebody else succeeding and you not, you know, don't let those negative things be what you meditate on or think on. Let the actual information in itself be the thing that you think on and meditate on. And that's what Jacob does here. So, verse 12. And his brethren went to feed their father's flock in Shechem. And Israel said unto Joseph, Israel's Jacob again, do not thy brethren feed the flock in Shechem? Come, and I will send thee unto them. And he said to him, here am I. And he said to him, go, I pray thee, see whether it be well with thy brethren, and well with the flocks, and bring me word again. So he went him out of the vale of Hebron, and he came to Shechem. So his dad's like, hey, Joseph, your brothers took the flocks to Shechem to feed and to water and whatnot. Go check on them, see how they're doing. And Joseph's like, yeah, sure, you got it, Dad. I mean, it's a lot of old English way of saying a very simple thing in that chapter, in that little paragraph there. Yeah, I'll go check on them. Obedient son. Verse 15. And a certain man found him, and behold, he was wandering in the field. And the man asked him, saying, what seekest thou? And he said, I seek my brethren. Tell me, I pray thee, where thy feed their flocks. And the man said, they are departed hence, for I heard them say, let us go to Dathan. And Joseph went after his brethren, and found them in Dathan. And then they saw him afar off, even before he came near unto them. They conspired against him to slay him. And they said to one another, behold, this dreamer cometh. Come now, therefore, and let us slay him, and cast him into some pit, and we will say, some evil beast hath devoured him, and we shall see what will become of his dreams. Alright, so he goes to the town Shechem to find his brothers. Some dude there, he asks him, hey, have you seen my brothers? He's like, nope, they went on to Dathan or whatever, Dothan, and he goes down, and his brothers see him coming from a ways off. And the reason I laughed earlier is because to me it's funny that they say, how did they say it right here? And they said to one another, behold, this dreamer cometh. So they're kind of like insulting him. It's sarcasm. I mean, they're like, because they're going to keep his dreams from coming true. So they obviously don't really, they think they can change this dream. Either they don't believe the dream is actually from God or an actual like vision of the future, or they think that they can change this vision of the future. Either way, it's sarcasm they're using. And it's just kind of funny to me. They're like, ha, this dreamer, you know, this guy, what does he think he knows? And as soon as they see him, they're like, all right, we're going to conspire to slay him. Like, what a crazy, just like off-the-cuff sort of thing to say. I mean, I know you're jealous of your brother and you don't like that his cockiness or whatnot, but it's so crazy how quickly you are to slay your brother. And they know how awful this is. I mean, they've heard the story of Cain and Abel. They know the Bible up until this point, at least. They know that this is wrong, but they don't care. I mean, these patriarchs are forgiven later, okay? So remember, everything's forgivable, but realize they're doing it for their own selfish desires. They're doing it for they're giving in to, you know, this temptation, this spiritual temptation. My mom is reading this book right now, and it talks about temptations of the flesh and temptations of the devil and temptations of the spirit, and she is having trouble understanding the difference. She thinks it's all temptations of the same sort, which is fine, but I tend to see things a little differently. Like a temptation of the flesh of like lusting after something or someone versus temptations of the spiritual realm, which is something like this. You know, you're tempted by forces beyond our control. Kind of like, you know, honor is not a tangible thing, but it's something we're all aware of. You know, integrity exists. but it's not a tangible thing. And that's kind of what's going on here. They're slaying their brother over an envy. It's real. It exists. It exists so much that it causes them to kill, or to try to kill. Spoiler alert. But they're giving in to this temptation, not necessarily of the flesh. They're doing it out of envy, which is a real thing, but it's not a tangible thing. These are the spiritual temptations, in my understanding, I should say. Okay, so let's conspire to kill him. As your brother's coming up, instead of being excited about it, they're just like, let's kill this guy, and we're gonna make it look like an animal killed him, and yeah, why not? So I was trying to look up something on this city, Dothan, because I remember a minister when I was younger saying something like that they weren't supposed to go to this place, Dothan, because of the people who were there, which makes a lot of sense because there's a lot of enemies in the area for them, but also because there's a lot of harlots in this city. I couldn't find anything on it, so it could have just been some minister talking out his butt, about stuff he didn't know. But also it could be like, why would they go to another city? They're probably doing something they weren't supposed to. I mean, that's what happened earlier in this chapter. I tend to think, not necessarily it was harlots, probably was, like what else? But maybe it was gambling, maybe just something going on that they shouldn't be doing. It's kind of like your parents tell you not to hang out in this certain place or that certain place, and you do it anyway. You just tell, don't go over, I don't want you going over to Jesse's house. It's okay if you hang out with Jesse, but I just don't want you to go over to their house for whatever reason. They don't need to tell you the reason. And you're like, oh no, I'm going to Steve's house, and you go to Steve's house for like 10 minutes, and then you go over to Jesse's house because you know why you're not supposed to go there, because they have beer in the fridge and they don't count them or whatever it is, And that's what I found is Dothan wasn't a good city. It was their enemies, and more than likely they were there for some harlots or something nefarious in nature. They see their tattletale brother. Here comes the kid who told on us at the beginning. Remember, he gave a negative report of their evil to his dad, and that's when he talks about his dad start showing him favoritism and giving him this colored coat. So, and then he starts having these dreams about how they're going to bow down before him, and now he's coming to the city to check on them when they're in the wrong city. This is where they were told to go. They said they were going to Shechem. Now they're in Dothan, where they're not really supposed to be. Probably doing something they're not supposed to be doing, and he's going to probably tell on them once again. This little do-gooder. You know what? Let's just kill him, throw him in a pit, and say that a lion or some beast of the land befell upon him. Again, because they don't want to get caught, and they're jealous. It's so crazy how quick they jump to talking about murder. And Reuben heard it. Now Reuben, remember this, heard it, and he delivered him out of their hands, and said, let us not kill him. And Reuben said unto them, shed no blood, but cast him into this pit that is in the wilderness, and lay no hand upon him, that he might rid him out of their hands, to deliver him to his father again. Okay, so it's like Reuben's probably kind of scared of his brothers at this time too, because they're talking about slaying Joseph, so he doesn't want to get slain. But at the same time, he doesn't want to kill his brother. He's not like ballsy enough to outright be like, no, we shall not do this. I will not. I forbid it. He's not like taking that kind of a stance on it. But he's doing. I won't make a joke. But remember, the Jews, the Hebrews, he's making a very shrewd move. All throughout the Old Testament, they're very shrewd. I mean, it's a respectable virtue to have. I'm not going to lie. Shrewdness is. But you see it, because he could just be like, no. But then he might be killed with his brothers. He makes the shrewd move of suggesting a plan that he can manipulate, or he thinks he can. But you can't, because God's in control. So he says, no, let's not shed blood. And it's probably easy for him to convince them of this, because they know how killing your brother is evil. Like, they're aware of this, and they're like, yeah, probably right. Like, that way we don't have the sin on our hands, is what they're thinking. So Reuben says, let's just throw him down this pit and cover it. And Reuben's thinking is that he'll come back and rescue his brother later on. So they'll throw him in the pit. He's gone. He can't get out. And the rest of the brothers don't have to worry about him again. And since they didn't shed his blood, even if he dies of starvation or something, it's not on their hands in their own minds because they're not spilling his blood. But Reuben's plan is to go back, save him after they throw him in the pit. And it came to pass when Joseph was come unto his brethren that they stripped Joseph out of his coat. Wait, what are you doing, guys? I mean, I want to know what the relationship was because Joseph kind of likes. You can tell that either he kind of likes his brothers, and he's the youngest, so maybe he's just used to getting picked on. That's what I'm assuming because they won't speak peaceably to him, but yet he still loves and trusts them. So he probably just thinks getting picked on is like a normal thing. So I'm wondering if he was even aware that it was like a thing. If he's like, guys, come on, knock it off, you guys, and they're just stripping him and hazing him. So they took his many-colored coat that was on him, and they took him and cast him into a pit, and the pit was empty. There was no water in it. I don't know. I wonder if at this point he realized if this is some serious or if it was still just kind of like a little prank they were playing on him. And they sat down to eat bread. And if they sat down to eat bread right there, I definitely would think that they were pranking me. Like, guys, come on, seriously, guys, come on, seriously, let me out. Come on, can I have some bread? And they sat down to eat bread, and they lifted up their eyes and looked, and behold, a company of Ishmaelites came from Gilead, and their camels bearing spicery and balm and myrrh, going to carry it down to Egypt. And Judah said unto his brethren, What profit is it if we slay our brother, and conceal his blood? Come, and let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother and our flesh. And his brethren were content. So, Judah, remember, Christ comes from Judah. I know he does, but I'm almost about to look it up. But anyway, he suggests, so Reuben's got a plan to save his brother in the end. But Judah, being even shrewder, is like, wait, we're not going to make any money here. Why should we kill him? Or why should we throw him in this pit to leave him to die? And then the blood's still kind of on our hands. My way's even more virtuous because he doesn't die, and we make some money. Like, what profit is it to kill him? Let's sell him to these Ishmaelites. Shrewd move. It's just funny to me how the thinking that's going on. Because you're selling your brother. Like, they're like, we can't kill him. He is our brother. He's of our flesh. So let's just sell him as a slave. I mean, what? Alright. Shrewd. You got to admit it. It's super shrewd. Come and let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hands be upon him, for he is our brother. Yeah, so slavery is better. Real virtuous to Judah. But you're making money. Way to go. Then there passed by Midianites, merchantmen, and they drew and lifted up Joseph out of the pit, and sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver. It's kind of a low deal. I mean, he's in his prime. He's 17. He's fit. He's taking care of flocks. He should be getting better price for that. I'm just saying. Where'd the shrewdness go on that? Yep, Judah. That's where Christ comes from. Alright. So they get him for 20 pieces of silver, and they brought Joseph into Egypt. And Reuben returned unto the pit, and behold, Joseph was not in it. The pit. Okay, so I gotta go back here. And Reuben said unto them, Shed no blood, but cast him upon the pit in the wilderness, and lay no hand upon him. And it came to pass, when Joseph was aware, his coat many colors. So clearly, when they sat down to eat bread, Reuben wasn't there anymore. I'm wondering if he was like so against it that he just suggested it, and then was like, all right, I'm going back, so that would give him time to double back again. Because clearly he's not there when Judah sells him. He must have already left at this point. It doesn't say it, but otherwise, why would he return? Why would Reuben return to save his brother from the pit if he knew Judah sold him? So Judah and maybe some of the other brothers sit down around the pit to eat bread, and Reuben leaves with his flocks so that, again, so he can have time to double back and save his brother. And that's what happens. He doubles back, but Judah's already sold him to the Ishmaelites, who took him to Egypt. And behold, Joseph was not in the pit, and he rent his clothes. And he returned unto his brethren and said, The child is not, and I, whither shall I go? And they took Joseph's coat and killed a kid of the goats and dipped the coat in the blood. And they sent the coat of many colors, and they brought it to their father and said, This have we found. Know now whether it be thy son's coat or no. And he knew it, and said, It is my son's coat. An evil beast hath devoured him. Joseph is without doubt rent in pieces. And Jacob rent his clothes, and put sackcloth upon his loins, and mourned for his son many days. And all the sons and all the daughters rose up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. And he said, For I will go down into the grave unto my son mourning. Thus his father wept for him. And the Midianites sold him into Egypt, unto Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, and captain of the guard. So, what happens here? It's real sad. It's again, nothing falls outside of God's forgiveness and His providence, and there's clearly a plan for everything that God does. But what Jacob goes through here is so sad to me, and what his other sons do is like, how could you do this? Reuben sounds like he wanted to save his brother, so he's got a few legs up on his brothers, I guess. But even then, when he sees his brothers gone, it doesn't say anything about him calling Judah out or Judah admitting what he had done with selling him for the 20 pieces of silver. So they just pretend like he's dead. He didn't even go, so he didn't go looking for his brother. They kill a goat, a young goat, and dip the blood of the coat in it. Take the coat, like, Dad, is this Joseph's? And Jacob is like, yeah, it's my son's. My favorite son, the son of my true love, the son that I had late in life, the son I dreamed for and prayed for, and now he's gone. And he weeps and he mourns like you wouldn't believe. Like anybody who's seen a father lose a son, imagine that. It's just so sad. This is something that I'm well aware of. We've had tragedies in our family, so it's incredibly hard to believe that they would do this to their own father. So that's the end of this chapter. I feel like it's hard to wrap it up because the story of Joseph goes on, and it's chapter by chapter. And chapters later, the story wraps up, and we get to have a great fulfillment of the message. But in this chapter alone, it seems to end on a cliffhanger, But one thing I want people to be aware of, the first thing is no family is perfect. But at the same time, you should strive to have the best cohesive family you can. Love your brother, love your sister, love your mother, love your father, love your children. Be a strong, cohesive family. Don't have a family of over competitive rivalries or favoritism. Definitely don't have multiple wives. I mean, come on. And don't stew in anger as the brothers of Joseph do. Don't live and fester and contemplate on envy and hatred and jealousy. See, Jacob had a bit of that. That's why he scolded Joseph when Joseph first told him about his dreams, how Jacob would bow down before him. He was upset. You're my son. I mean, I love you, but you to bow to me. But he didn't then let that anger stew inside him. He let the information. What does this dream mean? He thought on the information. So those are the main things to take away. Don't live a life of envy, of jealousy, of stewing in those things. Live a life of contemplation, taking things to the Lord in prayer, and also do your best to have a strong family structure of love for everyone. Best way you can keep from showing favoritism is to make it perfectly clear that you love God above everyone else. And also, you loved your spouse above your children. That's very important to do. All right. God bless. Have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, or good night.